Good morning. We are going to keep going with this idea of dealing with anxiety. What I want to do is kind of take things to the next place. One of the things that often happens when you're dealing with anxiety is that you're very focused on getting rid of the anxiety, and that's natural. In fact, maybe in some ways you might say, well, isn't that what this whole thing is about? And in some ways it is, but I get a little concerned that sometimes in our lives, and I frankly have caught myself in this same kind of vortex, where I'm so focused on not feeling a particular way that the victory is the distillation of the anxiety. The victory is, can I just have quiet? The victory is, can I just be free from the tense moments and maybe how it's manifesting in my body or in my relationships or how my nerves might feel on edge. And I think what happens is, as a result, we sort of have the wrong target. We're trying to maybe get rid of anxiety, and to do that, we're just focusing on the removal of it and the presence of what we call peace. But I'm not sure that that actually is what will arrive us at a location in our life of peace. I think there's something else that we need to shoot for, and peace comes in its train. I think there's something else, to use a different metaphor, that is sort of the point of the spear or the tip of the arrow. And peace is kind of the shaft or the feather. But that the tip of the arrow is something else. And we've looked at this text before, but I just want to highlight it for you and show what I think is the tip of the arrow in the way to help further push anxiety away and allow something else to ultimately fill in its place. Certainly peace, but something else. Do not be anxious about anything. This is Philippians 4. But in everything by prayer and supplication, and then there's this statement, right? With thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God. So when does peace come? And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and minds, and your minds in Christ Jesus. So peace comes on the heels of thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is the point of the spear or the tip of the arrow. Peace becomes the shaft and the feather. It's that which follows in the train, if you will, of gratitude, of thanksgiving. So what I want you to think about this week is that as you're trying to deal with anxiety, an added layer after all of the techniques we've talked about, as we've processed ways to deal with it, as we've talked about this sort of stilling your body, so forth, happening to yourself as a soul body, entity. How is it that you can further press anxiety away? Well, it's by focusing on gratitude. When I was a kid, there was a pastor and his wife in a small country church that I grew up in. And she, bless her heart, she played the piano, and she sang, but she wasn't a very good singer. But boy, she sang with all her heart. And she used to sing there's a song that used to go like this: count your blessings, name them one by one. Count your blessings, see what God has done. And I'm not a singer either, obviously. But she changed the words. And I always remember it as a little kid. She changed it from count your blessings, name them one by one. And she would say, count your blessings, name them ton by ton. And I always remember her doing that. Count your blessings, name them ton by ton. And that's because if you stop, if you pause, if you still yourself, if you practice some of the things we've talked about, if you get in a space where you can meditate upon what God has done, what God is doing, and based upon that, what you can anticipate God doing in the future, what you find is that gratitude will begin to fill you and begin to well up within you. And you'll find that gratitude has an effect of distilling your anxious heart. Because, you know, when you begin to thank God for the things that you take for granted, when you begin to thank God for, and really assess the scope of your life, when you begin to thank God for how he's allowed you interactions with a variety of people, when you begin to thank God for the people that he's brought into your story and how you've been able to connect with them and hopefully point them toward the Lord, when you begin to thank God for the family relationships and the things you get to pour into, when you begin to thank God for your job, when you begin to see things as gifts, when you see past the gift to the great giver of those gifts, what happens in your life? Well, your focus begins to shift. Because remember, anxiety is intrinsically narcissistic. Anxiety is a turning in upon the self and the perseveration of your mind and your attention upon your own situation, whether it's in your body, whether it's in your soul, whether it's in your relationships. But it is putting you at the center where now your thoughts are all about your feeling destabilized, you're feeling discontented, you're feeling disrupted in your daily rhythms, you're feeling this sense of tension. And now, how do I get out of it? How do I get out of it? How do I? And it becomes a dance, right? A narcissistic dance with the self. And therefore what happens in anxiety is it's hard to minister to people because your eyes aren't turned outward. So one of the ways that you can help deal with anxiety is by actually just determining on a daily basis to turn yourself outward. Now, I've shared before, I think in Thoughts for the Day, certainly, and I may have earlier in one of these Thoughts for the Weeks, but neuroscientific studies have been done. Brain resonance imaging of people who habituated gratitude over a span of 6 months, who are experiencing depression and anxiety. In a controlled study, Jeffrey Schwartz, UCLA, who's written a lot on the issue of mindfulness, just leave that aside for a moment, he pointed out that they could actually see a difference in the calibrated brain chemistry of people who had habituated gratitude in their daily life over a span of 6 months. They were really, through their soul, rewiring their brain. Now, that tells you some things, right? It tells you not just about body-soul interaction that we talked about in a previous Thought for the Week, but what it tells you is that gratitude itself is its own weapon against anxiety because it pushes you away from the self and it gets you seeing God for who he is. It gets you seeing others as a gift. It gets you seeing life itself as a gift. It gets you seeing, and not just focused on all the problems, but smelling the flowers and experiencing it. It gets you even then seeing the problems as opportunities and challenges that you're the one who gets to happen to them. Let me give you another verse. Colossians 3:15. And let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts. Who doesn't want that? The peace of Jesus rule in your hearts, to which indeed you are called in one body. As a body of believers, you're called to live in relational peace. You're called to live in personal peace. Let the peace of Christ rule in your hearts, to which you are called in one body, period. Then there's a short sentence, and be thankful. Why does Paul put that there? Because gratitude is intrinsically connected to peace. So if you want peace, you might think of not aiming for peace. You might think of aiming for gratitude. And then what you might find is that peace comes in its train, right? And so the space in your heart gets filled with peace because you start looking out. You start receiving life as gift, and you start living in a worship of the Lord rather than the perseveration of the self that anxiety begs you to focus on. Free your hearts through gratitude this week, and may the Lord bless you.